Explosions tore through the darkness over the Strait of Hormuz as Iranian kamikaze boats and suicide drones slammed into civilian tankers, turning the sea into a blazing inferno. The Revolutionary Guard issued a brutal ultimatum: no ship will pass. This is your final warning. Iran believed they could bring America and the West to their knees by choking the world's most vital oil artery. They were deadly wrong. In a lightning counterstrike, American carrier strike groups unleashed absolute hell. Tomahawk missiles and B-52 bombers obliterated Iranian ports and warships. In mere days, over 95% of Iran's navy was wiped out, reduced to smoldering wrecks and shattered hulls. But the nightmare had only just begun. With their waters turned into a death trap, the surviving Iranian ships fled in panic across the vast Indian Ocean, hunted relentlessly by U.S. submarines and surface fleets. These desperate vessels raced thousands of kilometers toward distant ports, only to be chased down like prey. This was no orderly retreat. This was the total humiliating collapse of Iranian naval power. America didn't just sink a navy, they sent a savage message to the world. The oceans are ours, and nowhere is safe. The hunt is on. Stay with us. If you want more hard-hitting military analysis like this, smash the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support keeps us delivering the real signal. But the destruction in the Strait of Hormuz was only the tip of the iceberg. With their home ports under relentless American bombardment, Iran's surviving warships had nowhere left to hide. Their territorial waters had become a death zone. Dozens of corvettes, fast attack boats, and larger vessels were forced into a frantic, humiliating exodus, fleeing thousands of kilometers into the open Indian Ocean like hunted animals. Among them were Iran's most prized iron behemoths, the Iris Dina, Iris Levon, and Iris Bushehr. These ships had just returned from the Milan 2026 multinational naval exercise in Visakhapatnam, India. They were supposed to head home in triumph. Instead, they became symbols of a navy in total collapse. The Iris Dina led the desperate run. After departing Visakhapatnam, she turned southwest across the Bay of Bengal, racing through international waters toward the southern coast of Sri Lanka, a journey of nearly 2,000 nautical miles. The crew pushed the ship to its limits, hoping the vast ocean would swallow them from American eyes. They were wrong. U.S. forces had been tracking every move from the very beginning. Satellites, reconnaissance aircraft, and silent submarines shadowed their every turn. When the Iris Dina accelerated in panic, it only sealed her fate. On March 4th, 2,026 inches international waters, off Sri Lanka, a U.S. fast attack submarine fired a single Mark 48 torpedo, the first torpedo strike against an enemy warship since World War II. The explosion ripped through the hull with terrifying force. Within minutes, the proud frigate began her final plunge into the depths. Fires raged, sailors screamed, and the sea claimed 87 lives. Only a handful survived to be rescued by Sri Lankan forces. It was a quiet, merciless death delivered from the shadows. The Iris Levon followed a similar path of terror. Originally heading toward India's southern coast, the ship suddenly altered course, claiming a technical malfunction. She barely limped into the port of Kochi, India. But safety was an illusion. All 183 crew members were immediately taken into custody and confined to nearby naval facilities. Their warship was detained a prisoner in a foreign harbor. Not far behind, the fleet replenishment ship Iris Bushehr met the same grim end. Seeking refuge in Colombo, Sri Lanka, she was promptly detained by local authorities. Neither vessel would ever complete its escape. Did these humiliating captures stop the Iranian exodus? Not at all. Wave after wave of surviving ships poured out of Bandar Abbas and Chabahar, scattering southward toward the Indian Ocean and Pakistani waters. Some tried to hide among the so-called shadow fleet smuggling oil to China. Others fled in small, vulnerable boats, praying for any safe port. The U.S. Navy hunted them without mercy. More than 60 Iranian vessels were struck and neutralized in the open sea. The once proud Iranian Navy realized with horror that they were completely trapped in a vast oceanic killing field. No friendly coast would shelter them. No darkness could conceal them. This was not a tactical withdrawal. This was the total annihilation of Iranian naval prestige broadcasted live to the world. The few remaining ships either cowered in neutral ports or scattered like ghosts across the ocean. Their dream of projecting power beyond their shores had been buried forever beneath the waves. America's message was loud and crystal clear. The oceans are not a sanctuary for America's enemies. There is no escape. There is no hiding place. And yet, this desperate flight across the Indian Ocean was only the surface of a much deeper strategic disaster for Tehran. So why did Iran trigger this catastrophe? What insane calculation made Tehran believe they could close the Strait of Hormuz and survive the American wrath? It all began with a ruthless and reckless offensive. In the narrow 3.3-kilometer-wide choke point, through which nearly 20% of the world's daily oil supply once flowed, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy launched a savage campaign. They attacked 17 commercial tankers trying to pass. 6 massive vessels were left crippled and burning. The Thai-flagged tanker Mayori Nari became a horrifying example. After the crew was evacuated, Iranian explosive-laden kamikaze boats slammed into its stern just above the waterline, leaving signature blast patterns that screamed suicide drone swarm. Even a Russian LNG carrier, a ship from one of Tehran's few remaining allies, was not spared. Flaming steel hulks dotted the sea, sending shockwaves through global energy markets. On March 13, 2026, Mojtaba Khamenei appeared on state television and made the regime's intentions brutally clear. The strait would become a weapon of economic terror. Alireza Tangsiri, the fiery commander of the IRGC Navy, went even further. In a direct, arrogant ultimatum broadcast to the world, he declared ships from the United States, Israel, and Europe will not be granted passage. If you doubt us, come and test us. Their goal was cold and calculated drive oil prices above $100 per barrel overnight, ignite runaway inflation in Europe and America, and spark domestic unrest that would force Western governments to back down. Tehran dreamed of winning the war, not with superior firepower, but through global economic chaos. But here lies the fatal strategic blunder. Iran understood perfectly that it could never match the US Navy in a conventional fleet battle. After suffering devastating losses against American forces in 1988, the regime made a conscious shift. They abandoned dreams of symmetrical naval power and embraced asymmetric warfare with fanatical devotion. Instead of billion-dollar warships, Iran hid its real teeth deep inside rugged coastal mountains and underground tunnel networks overlooking the strait. Massive anti-ship ballistic missiles, the Qiyam-2, and cars capable of Mach 3 speeds waited in camouflaged caves. A single strike from these hypersonic killers could send a fully loaded supertanker to the bottom in minutes. Complementing them were swarms of low-cost Shahed 136 kamikaze drones, the so-called poor man's cruise missile. Built for just tens of thousands of dollars each, these one-way attack drones could be launched in hundreds from mobile or underground pads. Their mission overwhelmed advanced air defenses through sheer numbers and saturation. The shallow island-strewn waters around the strait became a deadly maze. Fast attack boats, suicide speedboats packed with explosives, and smart naval mines lurked in every cove. From the rugged coastline, IRGC operators could strike and vanish like ghosts, and Iran was not fighting alone. Their Houthi allies in Yemen added a second front in the Red Sea, firing Iranian-designed Quds and Tufan missiles at shipping, creating a deadly dual choke point crisis that threatened to strangle global trade from both directions. This was asymmetric warfare at its most dangerous, cheap, dispersed, and designed to inflict maximum economic pain at minimal cost. A swarm of drones costing a few $100,000 could threaten a billion-dollar cargo ship and its valuable cargo. For a brief, terrifying moment, the strategy appeared to work. Daily traffic through the strait, normally 70 to 80 massive vessels, plummeted almost to zero. Over 1,000 tankers and cargo ships sat helplessly anchored outside the Gulf, waiting for a safe corridor that never came. Insurance risk premiums skyrocketed. Fuel prices surged. The world held its breath. But Tehran had made one catastrophic miscalculation. They underestimated the speed, precision, and sheer overwhelming power of the American response. While Iran relied on shadows and swarms, the United States brought carrier strike groups, advanced satellite networks, and relentless air superiority. The asymmetric doctrine that once seemed invincible was about to meet its match. What happened next would prove that even the cleverest traps can be dismantled when a superpower decides the oceans must remain open at any cost. The consequences of Iran's reckless gamble exploded far beyond the Strait of Hormuz. In a matter of hours, the world's most critical energy artery was slashed open. Daily traffic that once saw 70 to 80 massive cargo ships and tankers safely passing through the narrow strait collapsed almost to zero overnight. Over 1,000 commercial vessels now sat helplessly anchored in a giant floating parking lot outside the Gulf. their crews watching the horizon in fear while millions of barrels of oil remained trapped. Global energy markets went into panic mode. Insurance premiums for any ship daring to enter the region skyrocketed to astronomical levels. Fuel prices surged at the pump in Europe and America, threatening to trigger the very inflation Tehran had hoped to weaponize. Yet not everyone was equally paralyzed. China, bound by deep economic ties with Iran, played a different and highly calculated game. Massive Chinese-linked tankers like the Iron Maiden and Sino-Ocean boldly broadcast their nationality through automatic identification systems, AIS, essentially creating a digital shield. This open declaration of Chinese ownership appeared to grant them unofficial immunity. While others burned, these vessels slipped through, ensuring millions of barrels continued flowing safely to Chinese ports. Pakistan, desperate to secure its energy lifeline, launched Operation Muafiz-ul-Bar. Pakistani Navy warships began providing armed escorts for their own civilian tankers, but even they refused to enter the deadly narrow waters of the strait itself, limiting operations to the relatively safer Arabian Sea. Turkey took a more diplomatic route. Its transport minister publicly revealed that 15 Turkish-owned ships were stranded and waiting. Through intense behind-the-scenes negotiations, one vessel, the Rosanna, successfully navigated the deadly gauntlet and emerged unscathed. It became an instant symbol of what smart diplomacy could achieve. The remaining 14 ships, however, continued to wait in anxious silence. These rare successful passages revealed a harsh truth: the Strait of Hormuz was never completely sealed. Passage was still possible, but only for those with the right combination of military power, economic leverage, or clever diplomacy. Meanwhile, Iran escalated its desperation to a new level of danger. In a move that shocked even its few remaining partners, the regime ordered the mining of the strait and surrounding waters. 16 mine-laying vessels slipped out under cover of darkness, tasked with turning the seabed into a permanent death trap that could paralyze shipping for years. This was an inhumane gamble with global consequences, but the United States was watching. American forces moved with lethal precision. One by one, all 16 mine-laying ships were hunted down and destroyed before they could complete their deadly mission. The strategic blow was devastating. Had those mines been successfully deployed, clearing the strait could have taken years and cost billions. Iran's attempt to turn one of the world's busiest waterways into a dark, permanent shadow zone had been shattered at its source. The sinking of the Iranian Navy and the destruction of its mine-laying fleet did not end the crisis. The global economy was still bleeding millions of dollars every single hour. The United States now faced a much larger challenge, not just defeating Iran's navy, but forcibly reopening the arteries of world trade. And Washington was prepared to do whatever it took. The destruction of Iran's surface navy and the sinking of its mine-laying fleet did not end the fight. It only marked the beginning of something far more ruthless. With the oceans largely cleared of Iranian warships, the United States shifted into Phase 2, a full-scale, merciless campaign to eliminate every land-based threat that still endangered the Strait of Hormuz. President Donald Trump stepped in front of the cameras and delivered a message that left no room for misunderstanding. In harsh, uncompromising language, he declared that America would use whatever level of force was necessary to keep the world's vital sea lanes open. "We will not allow a rogue regime to hold global energy security hostage," he stated. The tone was clear. This was no longer a limited operation. This was a decisive, strategic offensive. CENTCOM immediately took charge. American warships led by the mighty carrier strike groups of the USS Gerald Ford and USS Abraham Lincoln assumed the role of global maritime police. U.S. Navy destroyers and cruisers began personally escorting civilian oil tankers through the once deadly waters. Advanced air defense systems formed an impenetrable steel dome over the strait. The message to the world was unmistakable: if you want to move oil sail under American protection. But the real war had now moved inland. From the rugged mountains and hidden coastal tunnels of southern Iran, the regime still possessed a dangerous arsenal of asymmetric weapons. Anti-ship ballistic missiles, drone launch sites, underground command centers, and mobile radar stations continued to pose a lethal threat. The Pentagon knew that as long as these systems survived, the crisis would never truly end. American intelligence went into overdrive. Satellites in orbit and high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft scanned every inch of Iran's coastline second by second. Nothing was hidden. Every suspicious movement, every heat signature, every camouflaged bunker was identified and logged. Then, the hammer fell. Advanced American bombers B-2 Spirits and B-52S began raining precision death from the sky. Strike after strike obliterated radar installations, drone launch pads, and underground missile storage facilities. Explosions lit up the night as deeply buried bunkers were breached by bunker-buster munitions. Command and control nodes were wiped out in seconds. Production facilities that manufactured the Kiam-2 and Kars missiles were turned into smoking craters. This was not simply retaliation. This was systematic decapitation. The United States was no longer just destroying the weapons being fired. They were destroying the entire infrastructure that allowed those weapons to exist: factories, supply chains, communication networks, and the hidden caves that had sheltered Iran's asymmetric doctrine for decades. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth made the strategy brutally clear in his latest statement: Iran's military capabilities have suffered catastrophic damage. We will continue offensive operations until every threat to freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz is permanently eliminated. There will be no safe havens, neither at sea nor on land. What the world was witnessing was a new kind of warfare, the direct confrontation between overwhelming conventional superpower, hidden asymmetric force. Iran's strategy relied on mobility, concealment, and surprise. America's strategy relied on total surveillance, precision strikes, and relentless pressure. Hunting individual missiles hidden in mountain caves was slow, expensive, and extremely complex. It required patience, superior technology, and an iron will. So far, the United States had demonstrated all three. Dozens of American warships and destroyers, supported by carrier air wings, continued to dominate the region. The skies belonged to American jets, the seas belonged to American fleets, and now even the mountains and tunnels of Iran were no longer safe. The price Iran paid for its naval ambitions was beyond devastating. Its once proud navy had been almost completely erased from the map. The surviving ships had fled in panic or been captured in foreign ports. Its attempt to mine the seas had been crushed before it could begin. And now its land-based asymmetric network was being dismantled piece by piece under constant American bombardment. Yet the war was far from over. The final phase of this conflict had shifted into the silent, deadly realm of shadows where unmanned aerial vehicles, mobile launchers, and deeply buried facilities still lurked. Iran's remaining asymmetric power, though severely weakened, continued to pose a lingering threat from the rugged terrain. In this high-stakes geostrategic chess game, the moves were becoming increasingly brutal. America had proven it could dominate the oceans. Now it was proving it could reach deep into enemy territory to enforce its will. The question that remained was simple yet terrifying. How much longer could Iran's battered asymmetric forces withstand this level of sustained high-tech pressure? The answer would determine whether the Strait of Hormuz would once again become a safe highway for global energy, or remain a global 12 battlefield for years to come. The Iranian Navy has been virtually erased from the map. In just days, a once defiant force that dreamed of challenging American dominance at sea was reduced to burning wrecks, captured vessels in foreign ports, and scattered survivors hiding in distant harbors. Their reckless attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz ended in total humiliation. Their sophisticated asymmetric arsenal hidden in mountains and tunnels is now being systematically dismantled under relentless American strikes. The message from Washington is loud, clear, and unmistakable. The world's oceans remain under American control. There is no sanctuary for those who threaten global trade. There is no place to hide, neither on the surface beneath the waves, nor deep inside coastal bunkers. This conflict has now entered its most dangerous phase. The war has moved from the open sea into the rugged mountains and silent tunnels of Iran, where unmanned drones and mobile launchers still lurk in the shadows. The outcome will decide whether the Strait of Hormuz returns to being the vital lifeline of global energy or remains a permanent zone of tension and disruption. So here are the critical questions we must ask. How much longer can Iran's remaining asymmetric forces withstand the overwhelming technological and military pressure from the United States? Will Tehran finally accept reality and seek de-escalation, or will they continue a fight that is rapidly becoming unwinnable? And most importantly, can the Strait of Hormuz once again become a safe passage for the world's oil and cargo ships? The coming weeks will provide the answers. War Signal News will continue to bring you the most detailed, unflinching, and real-time analysis of this fast-evolving conflict. We cut through the noise and deliver the raw truth behind every strategic move. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines and understand the real balance of global power, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. How long do you think Iran can hold out? Do you believe the strait will reopen fully, or is this crisis just beginning? Thank you for watching until the end. This is War Signal News, where the signal never fades. We'll see you in the next update.